and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where it's our 15th anniversary! You know what the best part is? This has actually been a pretty low-key Halloween. No ghosts, no horrible monsters coming to murder me. All we had were a bunch of multicolored cybermats attacking Clive Sinclair.
What am I supposed to do?
See you in January, hopefully. But anyway, yeah, 15 years. I'm sorry I don't have anything huge to celebrate the occasion. 15's a good number to do that sort of thing, but it's been pretty damn hectic. Schedule slippages, Patreon polls, streams, making multicolored cybermats.
They're all staring at me.
Good, good. Don't show fear, Clive. They can smell it on you. So yeah, sorry if this year there isn't a big 15th anniversary celebration thing where we look at like maximum clonage again or something, but we have actually been doing something these last few years. While the Ring reviews have been going on, we've been focusing on a smaller aspect of the Clone Saga that was a pretty big deal at the time. The death of Dr. Octopus. We saw him find out Peter's identity and save his life from being poisoned 2 years ago. Last year, we saw the miniseries detailing his funeral, how a few supervillains were roped into retrieving his technology, and his family as a part of his legacy. So since the Ring reviews were finishing off, I wanted to see if there was a direct follow-up to Funeral for an Octopus and all that, beyond the new Dr. Octopus who would show up in The Greatest Responsibility. And there is! Sort of. The Mark of Kaine is kind of a filler storyline. It does resolve a couple of points, but really it's another example of the Clone Saga spinning its wheels because the marketing department was telling them to. And you know what? We do have something that we can follow up on for the 15th anniversary, especially since I've glossed over it twice now. At the end of Smoke and Mirrors, the Clone Saga storyline where we began with the show, the Jackal claimed that the real Peter Parker was somewhere in his self-destructing lab, the final panel revealing some sort of clone pod. So what was inside of it? Another Peter Parker! It was decided that since they were already calling into question whether Peter or Ben was the clone, that they could throw a curveball that neither one was the original Peter Parker, hence this addition. It's not a bad idea for how to keep the story going, it's just the payoff was less than satisfying. In between Smoke and Mirrors and this one, we had the last few storylines I reviewed. Aunt May died, Peter got arrested for the murders Kaine committed involving Detective Raven's partner, and a few other short storylines occurred wherein this third Peter Parker was wandering around with amnesia, slowly putting his memory back together until he realized who he was supposed to be. And while we're going to look into some more behind the scenes later for the final part of this, we should get started on the actual story here. So let's dig into Spider-Man, the Mark of Kaine, and see where this all leads us.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man, punch, sporadically a grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Reading from a trade, so no looking at the covers. Save for this first one, Web of Spider-Man number 124, wherein Kaine shoves his name in place of the usual logo, even knocking down the price, number, and comics code stamp. I like quasi-fourth wall breaks like that. We open with Peter Parker in Rikers Island with kind of hilariously over-the-top restraints for Peter. I mean, sure, he's accused of multiple murders, including Raven's partner, but he's exhibited nothing in prison to warrant the connected leg and arm shackles. This isn't really happening. Aunt May can't be dead. She can't be. That's just a non-start for this series. She'll be back in no time. Mary Jane can't be alone now, carrying our unborn child. My clone can't be alive, back on the loose in New York. Especially my clone being alive and running loose in New York. Not now, not in the 2020s. Just not happening at all. And I can't possibly be under arrest for first-degree murder. I mean, manslaughter, sure. Who hasn't done that? Peter's at a press conference for reasons I'm not sure of, but apparently the public demanded it. Why Peter needs to be here for this is unclear, but the police lieutenant in charge of the case is arguing with Peter's lawyer over taking pictures at this time. Detective Raven, who in an earlier story got scarred by Kaine, theorizes that Peter's attorney is trying to try the case in the news because the evidence is too strong to win the case. Plus, as we saw during the actual storyline, The Trial of Peter Parker, the lawyer is kind of bad at his job. However, with the attack by Kaine, Raven is no longer convinced that Peter is guilty. It's just there isn't really anything he can do about it. It's not his case, and the evidence still leads to Peter, so showing off, hey, someone else gave me identical injuries as the murder victims, isn't really enough to get the prosecutors to reconsider. We cut over to Ben Reilly, Mary Jane, and Dr. Seward Trainer at the Good Doctor's laboratory. I should note that indeed, Seward is the correct pronunciation of his name according to the Life of Reilly interviewers. Some commenters were confused about that. I think I've pronounced it Sayward a few times. It happens. I'm not rereading the whole thing each time I do a Clone Saga review. Mary Jane is still early in her pregnancy, but she's had the news that there's something weird about it.
I'm certainly the closest thing you'll find to an expert on Spider-Man, Mrs. Parker, but I won't make a diagnosis until all the variables have been factored. For instance, is it allergic to shrimp? That's a variable we haven't considered yet.
He's talking about Peter's irradiated blood. Now my baby's radioactive! That can't be good! She worries, of course, that Peter's genetics were changed by the spider bite to the point where it'd be a risk for the baby. Still, while she wishes Peter could be with her right now, she's thankful that Ben's around. Riley, how's it feel to be an uncle? Like someone will make my character evil in 30 years, but that's normal, right? And up above, doing his usual thing of watching without actually contributing much to the plot, is Kaine, who reiterates how he had a vision of Mary Jane dying while still pregnant. We've done this verse, same as the first, so let's move on. The Peter Parker clone who came out of the Jackal's pod has made his way to Aunt May's house. He's learned of May's death and is checking out his old room. Just like I remember it. Unwashed, dirty clothes pile exactly where I left it. As he walks down the stairs, like the real Peter, he can't help but be in disbelief that Aunt May is dead. What's happened while I've been gone? How long have I been gone? There's a Star Trek The Next Generation now? Gotta love the coloring on his face. He's either really badly sunburnt or he's turning into the Red Hulk. He smashes a table in frustration, wondering who the hell did this to him, and then leaps onto a wall with a shocked expression on his face. I wonder if this is meant to imply that he believes that was out of character for him, since the table had a picture of him, May, and Uncle Ben on it. Especially with his narration repeating that he knows he's the real Peter Parker. But Peter should recognize that that is totally in character for him. Another reason why Peter really needs therapy is that he has outbursts of anger like this that sometimes lead to destruction. Dude needs healthier coping mechanisms. So who's the imposter? With my face and name. That's it, I'm calling an emergency meeting. No, I don't care if you were doing the Simon Says minigame. But yeah, while he wonders what that imposter did to his life, they finish up the tests on MJ. Seward gets to work on studying the data, while Ben reassures her that he'll call her as soon as they know something. He also offers to walk her home, but she turns him down. Still, after she leaves, he prepares to follow.
Where do you think you're going, my boy?
After her, of course. The city's not safe at night anymore.
It never was, Benjamin. You'd think there were hundreds of supervillains running around New York looking for a hero's love interest. Okay, fair point after her. But I'm not done with you just yet. We have to test your pregnancy now, Ben.
Over to the Daily Bugle, Robbie Robertson is talking with J. Jonah Jameson about how they can't just ignore the story about Peter Parker's arrest and trial, but Jameson insists they bury it. Robertson says they can't do that either. I know you're secretly paying for Peter's lawyer. Oh, well, that explains why he's so bad at it. Jameson got the cheapest one he could find who wasn't already a crook. Joking aside, it's one of those wonderful character traits that makes him a more morally gray character. He legitimately likes Peter and wants to help him even though he wants to maintain his tough facade. Still, Robbie says that this is crossing a line.
This is my newspaper, Robertson. Mine.
And if I want to print a listicle called 15 Ways Peter Parker is Innocent and Spider-Man is Framing Him, then I'll do it! He says that if anyone asks to say that it hits too close to home for them, they can't be objective about Peter Parker, so they won't cover it. After that, back over to Peter in prison. While normally I'm kind of frustrated by Peter and Ben moping in the Clone Saga because it tends to hit on the same existential point of, oh no, I'm a clone, over and over, this is definitely one I won't begrudge it. Peter Peter was arrested immediately after Aunt May's funeral, so he's had zero time to grieve for her, which is what he's doing now. But I guess they decided the book needed an action scene, so in a nearby cell, one of the other inmates accidentally fell asleep while smoking in bed and set his cell on fire. Amidst the massive amount of smoke, Peter escapes from his cell, gives him CPR, and then slips back into his own cell without anyone noticing. And man, Peter is blowing up like a balloon in this panel. He's all chest, no hips. His waist is as wide as his head. You don't really see that kind of proportions on male bodies in comics, but I guess somebody really wanted to show off Peter Parker's pecs. Also, where is Peter's cellmate during all this? The establishing shot showed it as night, it's a 2-bunk cell, and somehow I doubt that Playboy and the posters on the wall are Peter's. Unless those are the photos of MJ he took, which, yeah, I get it, taking those over any others. Prison's lonely. Speaking of MJ, Ben should really have walked her home, since an arm reaches out and pulls her into a sewer. God damn it, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this is not the time! No, it's Kaine. You shall know me as Kaine. Eventually you will, anyway. In the meantime, you will know me as Steve. Elsewhere, Detective Raven gets picked up, quite literally, by Stunner, the late Doc Ock's girlfriend. He tries to pull a gun on her.
Colt 45, semi-automatic. Play-Doh.
She's heard that he has doubts about Parker's guilt, so wants his help in tracking down the real killer, since Kaine killed Octavius too. Back in the sewer, Kaine does his cryptic shtick about how she's close to death, but MJ is bored of this nonsense and opens a water valve that knocks him away. She climbs out of the sewer, only to be met by the Peter Parker clone to end the issue. Over to Amazing Spider-Man number 401, which picks up from there. Mary Jane, you've got to listen to me. I am Peter, but not the Peter you married. Oh geez, let me get out the clipboard. Okay. Time traveler, clone, parallel universe, or magic duplicate. He accuses the actual Peter with being the imposter, but Mary Jane has no time for this bullcrap. Instead, just explaining that Kaine is after her. And as if on cue, Kaine comes up from the complete opposite way that Mary Jane did, somehow ending up behind the clone Peter.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
Kaine explains how this guy is just a random clone. Clone Peter denies this, and MJ just tells him to prove it. Defend her. And of course, he's gonna jump right at that, starting a fight with Kaine while she makes a run for it. Even if this guy has Peter's memories, he clearly does not have his fighting experience, because Kaine just wails on him and slams his face into a wall. Honestly, seems like a hit that should kill him, but it just knocks him out. Pathetic. The gene pool must have been thinning out when Warren hatched you. I don't know, man. You're the guy who failed to break his nose, even with an impact like that. While Kaine runs off in pursuit of MJ, the clone recovers and figures that 5 years locked away has slowed his reflexes and coordination. But now he's going after Mary Jane too. Back in Rikers Island, his parents die. His clone returns. He faces death, then cheats it. Loses Aunt May. Gains an unborn child. And now this insane murder charge.
Every single reference to your past paints an ever darker picture of a damaged, lonely little man.
Peter is visited by Chakra, one of the students of Judas Traveler. Haven't seen him in a while in this show, but he's back for this too. Truly, this is an anniversary celebration when we get to be reminded of some of the dumbest parts of the Clone Saga. Also, Peter's cellmate has returned.
Great continuity!
Chakra says that Kaine is pursuing Mary Jane, and that Judas Traveler just sent her to tell him that, and she fades away.
That was a great scene.
MJ contacts Ben Reilly about Kaine and the clone, but hangs up before she can say where she is. No, she has decided that she's sick of this. I've depended on men in masks to come and save me one too many times. I've been brutalized and victimized again and again by the Kaines of this world. And this is where I make my stand. Fight back. Wow! That's an incredibly stupid plan! Like, MJ, I'm all in favor of you taking a stand and all, but you know, Kaine has superpowers and you don't. At all. There is no way this ends in a victory for you. So, you know, maybe get Ben Reilly to back you up. He can be all, kick his ass, I got your flower, and all that, and still be there to help out.
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
But whatever. With his wife in danger, Peter has no choice but to break out of his cell and try to escape from prison. Even if it means that his escape will mean he's branded as guilty, and probably his secret identity exposed. Outside the prison bars, though, he's met by Judas Traveler, who says that trying to swim away from Rikers Island will probably just result in him drowning. What do you care? If there's anything I learned about you last time, it's that people don't matter to you. We're just chess pieces for you to move around.
Actually, you're more like my Warhammer miniatures, but I get your point. Perhaps I don't care. Or perhaps I care more than you could ever imagine. Can go either way, really. The writers haven't figured out my backstory yet.
But no, Traveler's here to reassure him that he'll be fine. They're casting an illusion that he's still in his cell, and Chakra will teleport him back to town. I don't understand. Why are you helping me? It doesn't make any—
Continue to question me, and my help will be withdrawn. Look, we need some magical bullcrap to move the plot along while not interrupting the trial stuff. Just go with the flow, Pete.
Scryer shows up, suggesting that Peter and Ben are
reflections of him, of the war within his own soul, which I have no idea what the hell that means, and again, I'm pretty sure the creators at this point didn't either.
At Peter and MJ's place, she narrates how after all the attacks from supervillains and intrusions into their personal lives, she bought a handgun and never told Peter. And her plan is basically just to shoot Kaine or whoever. It's not the worst idea, but again, maybe have some backup. In any case, the clone Peter has arrived, having found a Spider-Man outfit. She warns him not to come closer, and despite his spider sense clearly going off, he keeps trying to convince her of the truth. She opens fire, but misses, hitting their wedding photo instead. God, it's like horrible foreshadowing of what's to come with one more day. It's not clear whether she deliberately missed or unintentionally did so, but the point is the same. She drops the gun in horror over what she just did, allowing an opening for Kaine to arrive and knock out the clone. He tells her she's coming with him to protect her, and she goes for the gun, but he just forces it out of her hand. Before he can kill the clone, he hears Ben arriving in the skylight and decides to just take her and run. Mary Jane fainted? Passed out from him squeezing her wrist too tight? I don't know. Either way, she wakes up in some kind of cave. Where am I?
I suppose you could call it a purgatory of sorts, where lost souls hide from both hell and heaven. Also known as Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
He tells her to get comfortable since she'll be here for a while, but back at her place, Ben finds the clone who's regaining consciousness. He thinks it's the real Peter, wondering how he's here and where Mary Jane is, and then the real Peter shows up wondering what the hell is going on. Oh my god, it's like they're actually doing the multiple Spider-Men pointing at each other meme in the comic before it was a thing. This brings us to part 3, Adjectiveless Spider-Man number 58. It's raining all of a sudden as the real Peter enters because it would be really hard for an editor to keep track of how something looks from one part of a story to the next. Clone Peter tells them both to leave, that he's taking back his life, but real Peter wants to know where MJ is, saying he's Peter Parker. No, don't say that! You're not Peter! You're not me!
I'm you and you're me, and this is a gun.
Ben steps in, being the only one who knows that they aren't Peter Parker, and tells them to get their crap together so they can actually go and save MJ. Peter explains how he was told about Kaine, which gets Penn to grab Clone Peter and knock him into a wall, demanding answers. Unfortunately, while he's able to get out that he never saw his attacker and that he'll save her alone, the hit apparently was strong enough to knock him out. Or maybe he was faking it, I'm not sure. The writing on this issue feels a little rushed. It's not too bad, but stuff like that and some of the minor art errors feel like a sign that this was put together in a bit of a hurry. Peter decides to go after Mary Jane using remnants of his old black costume, which he has around for some reason, even though Mary Jane had asked him to get rid of it after Venom showed up, to create a makeshift outfit. This is another minor artistic error. I mean, he says it's remnants of his black suit, but you can clearly see the full outfit behind him, and for some reason his web shooters are on the outside like Riley's. Sure, it's a good way to keep the three Peters distinct, but if you're gonna bust out the costume, why not just go for the whole thing? Anyway, he tells Ben to look after the clone, but he's vanished.
Oh my god, he's not a clone! He's a ghost!
In the cave, MJ tries to leave, saying he'll have to kill her to stop her, but Kaine just says that all he wants is what Peter Parker has.
And there is only one way I know of getting it. A loan application! Can I use you as a reference?
Ben reunites with Peter as he poses on a rooftop, saying he'll need his help to fight Kaine. Still, Peter says MJ knows what to do in this situation, so they're gonna sit and wait. And across the way, the clone watches and waits too. In the cave, we see the plan. MJ has a spider tracer on her that she can activate to get his attention. Unfortunately, she's reluctant to do so, since it could make him break out of prison to come get her, but when Kaine has another vision of her death and warns her it's soon, she decides, yeah, screw this. Come save me and our baby. It indeed gets their attention, though Peter's being all pissy about Ben's presence since it's his wife and all. Still, they head off, the clone following behind. Good job on the art for showing the clone getting the signal too in the background. While Kaine is distracted by his vision, she decides to make a run for it so she's not just sitting and waiting.
It is torturous for me to have to play these cat and mouse games with her, having seen what I've seen. The visions of her broken and dying body. The time has come. Why does she have to keep doing this? All I've done is kidnap her and offer absolutely zero explanation for who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing. What's your problem, lady?
Our heroes find the entrance to the sewer system connecting to the cave, Ben finally insisting he goes in first to take the brunt of Kaine's attack, so Peter can focus on getting MJ out of there. However, once inside, the clone comes in too, ranting and raving about how he'll get Mary Jane out and kill whoever took her. And that's the big writing sign, according to the Life of Riley interview, that this clone is indeed not the real deal, that the real Peter wouldn't be talking of killing like this. I'm iffy on that, since in the heat of the moment, Peter has said stuff you'll regret, but hey, it's true that he ain't the real deal. In his rampage, he punches out a wall that leads to a cave tunnel. Kaine catches up to MJ, but so do the three Spider-Men. MJ is very confused about the presence of three of them. What is this? How can this be?
For he is the Kwisatz Haderach!
And so is he! And also him! And so the fight commences, the clone getting knocked away pretty quick, Kaine wanting to know which one is the real Peter, but Ben stepping in to keep him distracted. The clone slips away and gets to MJ first, but she can tell he's not the real deal, quickly identifying the real one as he punches the clone back. However, the clone goes wild, continuing to rant about killing people and... well, again, I get the feeling stuff was rushed because given how the next issue begins, he's probably supposed to be warping and degenerating from the stress of the situation, but he looks fine here. Kaine showing up with an unconscious Ben to block their escape. That brings us to Spectacular Spider-Man number 224, where, as I said, we can see the clone Peter is not doing so hot, especially since he's now drawn by Sal Buscema. Well, I say that, but this could also be Bill Sienkiewicz's fault, since he's credited for finishing the art and there's no inker listed. But either way, I know both artists are capable of much better looking stuff, but we saw the same pairing during Web of Death, and it looks even more hideous here. The inking is so scratchy and splotchy, and I have no idea what the hell is going on with Peter's expression here. Why is he winking? Also, at this point, I shall reveal this character's official name, Spider-Side. Why was Scarlet Spider deemed too ridiculous a name, but Spider-Side met with anything but scorn? Originally, Tom DeFalco wanted Spider-Side to be called Freak Face, as he's referred to throughout this issue, but for some reason it didn't happen. We actually saw Spider-Side during Maximum Clonage working for the Jackal, but this is his big reveal as a killing machine, genetically engineered by him for the sole purpose of destroying Peter, as revealed by Kaine. If he made a clone specifically for murdering Peter, why not just do it instead of wasting all our time with smoke and mirrors? Hell, when did he even have time to make this thing when he was supposed to be in a pod since the end of the original Clone Saga? In any case, Kaine tells them to leave so he can deal with it, but Ben reveals he was just playing possum and attacks him. The happy couple does indeed make their escape while we get into a free-for-all between Kaine, Ben, and Spider-Side. Spider-Side himself thinks he's the real Peter Parker, just genetically altered by the Jackal, and that he won't be cured until he destroys all the Jackal's enemies. While Ben decides to help Kaine take this guy on, it's over to Judas Traveler and Scryer to remind us about the illusion and how Traveler thinks Peter will return, though maintaining the illusion is taking a lot out of him. And scene. That accomplished a lot. Back to the fight, Kaine is able to bring a bunch of the wall down on Spider-Side, supposedly killing him, to Ben's horror. That wasn't necessary, you filthy murderer! We might have found a way to reason with him! If there's a trait that truly defines Peter Parker, and why Ben could have been the real one or taken over the role, it's his unending sense of morality. Even if he wanted to try to reason with this monstrous killer clone. However, the discussion is moot because he ain't dead, emerging from the rubble as his body continues to morph. Freakface seems capable of instantaneously recoding his own DNA. He's like a living VHS tape! While Peter and MJ escape the sewers, Kaine learns that the Jackal modified Spider-Side so his burning touch won't affect him. Realizing they need more room to maneuver, Ben takes Kaine so they can get up to the streets. MJ encourages Peter to go back and help Ben while she goes home, seemingly slobbering all over his face. I get the impression this is supposed to be the rain again, which is not currently pouring. Or even grosser, that this is sewer water all over his face that she's kissing. Ugh. Either way, she tells him to put the black costume mask back on and go kick some ass. Just remember that we have a firm date to live happily ever after, and I'm counting on you to keep it. 15 years later, and one more day is still the worst. Kaine and Ben emerge from the sewers, but Spider-Side isn't far behind, growing larger by the moment. Fortunately, Peter has somehow anticipated this and sets up a slingshot that launches steel girders at it! Was this his plan before he knew that Spider-Side could morph and grow giant size? Are we sure Ben's not the real Peter? Spider-Side continues to scream that he's the real Peter, even as he starts throwing cars around until he grabs a gasoline truck. Kaine, in turn, decides turnabout is fair play and tosses a car at him, resulting in an explosion that seemingly kills him. Obviously, we know he survives. Peter pulls Ben from the wreckage, but a remark from Ben reminds Peter that he's still awaiting trial for murder. Murders that he thinks Ben might have committed. However, to help prove his innocence, Ben declares that he'll swap places with Peter. He knows Peter will stop at nothing to prove his innocence and that his primary responsibility is to his wife, so he should be with her. Peter accepts this. And remember that this whole thing is happening because a clone of him just got blown up. I learned to stay true to myself by watching myself die. And so part 4 ends with Judas Traveler accepting the substitution, saying he'll continue the test of their sense of responsibility soon. All in all, not a terrible storyline. It's got a lot of weird or goofy bits, but it all comes together in the end. Wait a second, wasn't this supposed to be a follow-up on the Kaine kills Dr. Octopus thing? So, the Mark of Kaine is actually a 5-parter, but not really. Yes, this continues on directly from part 4, but it's honestly disconnected from the rest of the storyline. The Spider-Side stuff is over, Peter and Ben have switched places, the storyline naturally wrapped up in part 4, but now we move into Spider-Man Unlimited number 9 for a 50-page conclusion that has a completely separate plot from the rest of it. Behind the scenes, Tom Lyle was an artist on the Spider-Books who was promised a chance to do some writing. Giving him Spider-Man Unlimited made sense because Unlimited was a book released quarterly that had extra stories in it, usually multiple ones. Glenn Greenberg said that Lyle's inexperience as a writer really showed with this one, but that doesn't explain why they called this Part 5 of Mark of Kaine instead of like, The New Revenge of the Sinister Six or something. Really, I should have just done this on its own. Would have saved me some time making this review, but it felt weird to talk about something labeled as Part 5 without the rest, especially since some elements are continued from the first 4 parts. Hell, the end of Part 4 doesn't even advertise that the story continues in Spider-Man Unlimited number 9, just the next issue and its holodisc cover. Dude! Fortunately, despite it being 50 pages, there's not a ton of stuff to get into. Part of that inexperience is that the book is kind of full of padding or stuff that's easy for me to summarize. The Sinister Six, members being Hobgoblin, Electro, the Beetle, Shocker, Scorpia, a female version of Scorpion, I know nothing about them, the Vulture, and Mysterio, have gathered to discuss how Kaine has killed off both Doc Ock and the Grim Hunter. Hobgoblin's arranged all this, though Vulture is annoyed at Mysterio's recent betrayal in the Funeral for an Octopus miniseries. Except Mysterio didn't betray the Sinister Six, he betrayed Otto's cousin and manipulated him to be the fall guy while he hired the team to steal information. Vulture is also pissy about Hobgoblin leading the group against Kaine, getting into a fight with him until Shocker tells them to get their acts together. Hobgoblin's determined a general area where Kaine is usually spotted, which makes sense, he spends so much time lurking in the background that someone's bound to have spotted him. He even encourages the team to take some extra guns from him for the job. So, you're all a bunch of weaklings who can't defeat this Kaine with the weapons you already have? Even the Beetle didn't want any extra firepower. Truly, Spider-Man's deadliest and most cunning foe, the Beetle. I honestly keep forgetting the Beetle exists. The group splits up to cover their own sectors of the area. Operation Kaine Kill! Soul of a poet, the Hobgoblin. We cut over to Peter Parker wearing the Scarlet Spider costume, continuing on from the two having swapped places. He looks like the Scarlet Spider. He swings like the Scarlet Spider.
Steers like a cow.
He's on his way back to Mary Jane, but spots his greatest enemy, the Beetle, and decides to go after him to make sure he doesn't hurt anyone. Seeing Scarlet in pursuit, the comic actually makes the jokes for me as the Beetle is distracted and hits both an antenna and a chimney. As always, the Beetle is a man of great fortitude. in his dreams. Man, I bet they were going to reveal the Beetle as the true mastermind behind the Clone Saga until Tom Lyle got to him. The Beetle collides through a skyscraper window, deliberately this time, and injures a woman, forcing Peter to bring her to the authorities to get help. In his rush, he drops his web bag that contains the black costume mask and web shooters without noticing, allowing Ken Ellis, who's just there for some reason, to note how odd it is that he'd have them in his possession. The villains check in with each other, not finding anything over the course of a few pages. Hobgoblin begins to doubt his plan is gonna work, and we see that Kaine is just watching him from behind a water tower. Okay, I think it's Kaine, it's his MO, but he also got really beefy between issues. And another example of the editor wasn't really trying to keep the story consistent, Peter arrives back home, where MJ is now no longer being loving and supporting of her husband, able to identify him separate from his clone, but rather she is now paranoid, terrified, and aiming a gun at Peter, believing it's not really him because he's supposed to be in jail. Did she get attacked by some other Peter Parker clone on the way back home? What happened? I already used the great continuity clip! Peter proves it's him by reciting what he said to her when she first told him she was pregnant, and the two finally get to just chill. At Rikers Island, poor Ben has contracted Youngblood's disease. Give to the Youngblood's Disease Foundation today care of Atop the Fourth Wall, and we can someday get these poor people their eyes back. Anyway, he's still worried about Mary Jane, so decides to call her. Hey guard, I want to make a phone call.
Who is it this time, Parker? You make more phone calls than anyone else in here.
Look, I just have someone special in my life that I need to contact.
His name is Mac, and you can call him at 1-900-9094-MAC.
He leaves an answering machine message for her, though Peter is the one saying not to answer the phone, since he doesn't really know what he's going to do about Ben. However, back in the prison, Ben receives a visitor. Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat. Problem is, she debuted after the original Clone Saga, so Ben has absolutely no idea who the hell she is. He bluffs his way through the conversation, but she knows something's weird with him. I had heard something about Peter acting strangely over the last few weeks, but I had no idea it was so bad. Did he know that he had mustard in his hair? I mean, he acted like he didn't even know me, Felicia Hardy. The Black Cat. Then again, I apparently need to remind myself in my own head who I am. Felicia Hardy. The Black Cat. Also, what the hell is the deal with the texturing on this path she's walking on? Did they decide to try giving it a more realistic stone texture? Because it's not really working when it's the only thing that's filled in like that. Back over to Hobgoblin, Operation Kaine Kill has been a dismal failure for 4 hours, so he decides to call it a day. But then Spider-Man drops down and attacks him. Oh god, we've got another clone already? No, it's actually Kaine himself, wearing a Spider-Man suit over his regular outfit. Because I tear off the Spider-Man costume, a costume that I got on one of my trips into Parker's home. It's mine now.
Your logic is correct.
Hobgoblin was able to get a few gunshots off before Kaine smashed his gun, which was apparently loud enough for Peter and MJ to hear it from their apartment. As such, Peter suits up and heads out to investigate. Back to the battle. Eat some laser and a pumpkin bomb, you freak! Hobgoblin's signature catchphrase. Kaine notes that Hobgoblin is as strong as the Grim Hunter was, but less focused. There is fear in his behavior. A fear that eats into the darkest areas of his soul. The places no one wishes to look at. Oh yeah, but that's only because he hasn't had a chance to mop it in a while. Fortunately for Hobgoblin, the rest of the villains arrive to help. All of the Sinister 7 have the same thought running through their minds. Wait, there were 7 of us this whole time? Then why did the cover call this the Sinister 6? The group pile on Kaine, but their lack of teamwork allows him to counter them and force them into hitting each other instead. Meanwhile, Stunner and Detective Raven interrogate some crime boss looking for information on Kaine. They get it and leave. That was the entire amount of time we see them in this issue, even though they too were hunting for Kaine. The villains have managed to pull together and have a gun trained on Kaine, but fortunately for him, Peter arrives to save him. MJ, in the meantime, gets a call from Dr. Trainer, who says he needs to see her in person for her test results, but that it isn't anything bad, leading to her complaining to herself about how Peter isn't around. You can see that Tom Lyle drew inspiration from the best for this issue. Peter stops Kaine from using the Sting of Kaine to kill Hobgoblin. This story is called The Mark of Kaine, and he never uses the Mark of Kaine in it. And the villains counterattack, blowing up the roof and forcing Peter and Kaine off of it. Over to the Daily Bugle, Jonah is ranting that they don't have an experienced photographer to cover the fight. Biggest story in this town since Maximum Carnage, and we've got no photographer to cover it! Oh, sure, yeah, an alien symbiote goes on a rampage throughout the city, his girlfriend using her powers to inspire people to riot and kill each other, and a bunch of supervillains fighting each other. Just as big a story. Get some perspective, Jonah. He sends off a new kid with Ken Ellis to cover it, Jonah wishing that Peter was around. Oh, thank God, I was worried we wouldn't have another short, pointless scene in this issue. While Shocker presses the attack, Scorpia yells at the flying villains that their bombs knocked out some of their team, so now there are only 4 of them left. Anyway, turns out Trainer was full of it and had some bad news for MJ, so bad that she flees the lab. Peter and Kaine are able to knock out the remaining villains, except for Mysterio, who uses an illusion to make him think Peter has been killed by Hobgoblin and attacks our hero instead. Spidey forces Kaine back and confronts Mysterio, who decides to call it a day and leaves. With all that done with, he then heads out to find Kaine, worried that he'll go after Mary Jane again. Meanwhile, we cut over to Scryer hanging out where earlier Kaine had fought the 3 Spider-Men, finding the goopy remains of Spider-Side. He picks up the clone goop and makes it start glowing. And then he vanishes, saying that it may still have its uses. And so our comic ends with Felicia Hardy, who realizes that the guy in prison isn't Peter, especially since the Scarlet Spider who was fighting earlier was definitely Peter, and then Mary Jane shows up because she needs someone to talk to. This comic is mostly okay, but part 5 is just a baffling decision no matter how you swing it. Overall, the Mark of Kaine doesn't really do much other than resolve the 3rd Peter Parker and to swap Ben and Peter around. There's plenty of decent character stuff in there, and I'm with Glenn Greenberg. Spider-Side should have remained dead at this point. His story was over, and keeping him around just meant more confusion over how many clones there were. Judas Traveler and his entourage are actually really well used in this story. Not their pretentious babbling, of course, but rather a solution to get Peter into the action without disrupting the ongoing trial stuff. And him switching with Ben allowed Peter to become the main focus of the books again, since, you know, they were his titles. Still, we learn very little about Kaine other than he wants to protect Peter and MJ, but not why. Of course, we would find out later. And tacking on part 5 just felt kind of pointless when the actual storyline was resolved already. The Sinister Seven's inclusion made for a long fight scene, but nothing else of consequence. Plus a few bits of awkward dialogue and art. Still, certainly worse stories to come out of the Clone Saga. Next time, we close out Atop the Fourth Wall for this year with the final Ring review, Sadako-san and Sadako-chan. Happy 15th anniversary. Bit of a low-key one, but hopefully a fun one. Here's to the next 15.
Are you sure these cybermats are safe?
Oh, I forgot. We're actually calling them Robomats now for copyright reasons. I'm planning on selling them.
Cool, cool. You didn't answer my question.
Was that fear you showed? Yep, that was fear. Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching.